In 2014, a painting bought at a flea market for $45 sold at Christie's for $9 million. It was a work by Martin Johnson Head, a 19th century American landscape artist whose paintings had been disappearing into attics and storage rooms for generations because nobody recognized his style. The buyer who found it at the flea market did not know it was a Heady when he bought it. He bought it because something about it looked right. Then he looked at the signature. Then he made a phone call. That phone call was the $45 investment that returned $9 million. Every family has paintings. Most of them are exactly what they look like. But some of them are not, and the paintings that are not look exactly like the ones that are. The only difference is what is on the back of the canvas, what the signature says, and whether anybody ever looked. 10 categories. Starting now. Number 10. Hudson River School landscape paintings. The Hudson River School was not a school in any institutional sense. It was the name critics gave to a loose group of American landscape painters who worked primarily in the mid-19th century, united by a shared approach to depicting the American wilderness as grand, luminous, and spiritually significant. Thomas Cole, Frederick Church, Albert Bierstadt, and Asher Durand are the names most people recognize from this movement. Their major works sell for millions. But the Hudson River School extended far beyond its famous names. Regional painters working in the same style, trained in the same tradition, producing work of genuine quality, but without the career trajectory that leads to museum retrospectives, made paintings that now sit in attics and estate sales looking like attractive old landscapes with no particular significance. Here is what makes this category financially relevant to someone going through an inherited collection. The market for authenticated Hudson River School work, including work by documented but lesser-known painters in the tradition, has been consistently strong for 3 decades. A genuine oil-on-canvas landscape by a documented 19th century American artist working in the Hudson River tradition, in good condition with readable signature and provenance, sells for $5,000 to $100,000, depending on the artist and the quality of the work. The signature is everything. Turn the painting over before you look at the front. Examine the canvas for any markings, labels, or stamps. Then examine the front under good light, using a magnifying glass at the lower right corner, where signatures most commonly appear. A signature that has been overpainted or is partially obscured by old varnish darkening may need professional examination to read. Any 19th century American landscape with a readable or partially readable signature deserves research before it goes anywhere. Number 9. Paintings on wooden panel rather than canvas. This is the visual clue that most people walk past without understanding what it means, and it is one of the most reliable indicators that a painting deserves serious examination before it is moved, sold, or donated. Canvas became the standard support for Western paintings, beginning in the late 15th and early 16th centuries. Before that, painters worked primarily on wooden panels. A painting on a wooden panel, visible when you look at the back of the work, was made either before approximately 1500 or by someone deliberately working in an older tradition. Either possibility is worth attention. The panels themselves tell you things. The type of wood, the way the panel was joined if it is composed of multiple pieces, and the aging of the wood are all indicators of period. Oak panels were standard in Northern European painting before 1600. Poplar panels were common in Italian painting of the same period. A genuine old oak or poplar panel with natural aging and period construction is an object that specialists in early European painting examine very carefully. The paintings most consistently found in American estate clearances that belong to this category arrived through 3 channels. Diplomatic families who acquired European works in the 18th and 19th centuries, American collectors who bought European paintings in the post-war art market when prices were accessible, and religious institutions that dispersed works from their collections throughout the 20th century. A genuine oil-on-panel painting by a documented European artist from before 1700 in any condition represents a category of object that the auction market for old master paintings treats very seriously. Before any painting on a wooden panel goes anywhere, have it examined by a specialist in early European painting. The examination reveals information about the support, the ground, the pigments, and the aging that no visual inspection from across a room can provide. Number 8. American Impressionist paintings with documented signatures. American Impressionism developed as American painters who had studied in France returned home in the 1880s and 1890s and applied what they had learned from Monet and his contemporaries to American subjects. The movement produced painters whose names are now in museum collections across the country, and it produced a much larger group of painters who worked in the same style, sold their work to American families, and have been gradually rediscovered by the market over the past 40 years. The paintings from this tradition that sit in estate sales and attic collections look like pleasant old paintings of gardens, harbors, figures in sunlit interiors, and American landscapes rendered in loose brushwork and bright colors. They look decorative. They look pleasant. They look like old paintings that somebody's grandmother liked. Some of them are exactly that. And some of them are signed by artists whose work now sells for $50,000 to $500,000 at regional auction houses that specialize in American art. The artists whose names to research when found on American Impressionist works include Childe Hassam, John Twachtman, Edmund Tarbell, Frank Benson, and Frederick Frieseke for the major figures. But the regional Impressionists, painters who worked in specific art colonies like Old Lyme in Connecticut, Gloucester in Massachusetts, Woodstock in New York, and Laguna Beach in California, represent a broader market where documented but less famous names still command prices that would surprise most estate sale volunteers. Before any pleasant old landscape or garden scene with visible Impressionist brushwork is priced at $15 or donated with the books, photograph the signature and research the name. The Frick Art Reference Library maintains files on thousands of American artists, and the Smithsonian's Archives of American Art is searchable online. Those resources exist specifically for this kind of research, and they are free to use. Number 7. Portraits with any documentation connecting them to their sitters. A portrait of an unidentified person by an unidentified artist is worth very little financially, regardless of how well it is painted. A portrait of an identified person by an identified artist is potentially worth a very great deal. The difference between those two situations is documentation, and documentation is found on the back of paintings, in family papers, in estate records, and in the correspondence that surrounds significant objects. The portraits most consistently found in American estate clearances are the 19th century oil portraits that hung in family homes for generations. These were not amateur works. They were commissioned from working professional artists by families who wanted a record of their appearance. The tradition of commissioning family portraits was standard practice for middle and upper middle class American families throughout the 19th century. When the family that commissioned the portrait dispersed, the painting went with the furniture and the china and the silverware. The name of the sitter was known to the previous generation and not passed on to the next. By the time the portrait reaches an estate sale, it is an old painting of an unknown person in old-fashioned clothes, and it is priced accordingly. What changes the situation is finding the name. Any label on the back of a portrait, any inscription in the stretcher bars, any handwriting anywhere on the frame or the canvas may contain the name of the sitter or the artist. A portrait of a named individual who held public office, whose family was historically significant in their region, or whose descendants remain prominent, can attract specific collector interest that has nothing to do with the quality of the painting and everything to do with the identity of the person depicted. Before any portrait is sold or donated, examine every surface of the back of the painting and the frame for inscriptions, labels, or markings. Photograph everything. The name that seems insignificant may be the name that makes the painting significant. Number 6. California plein air paintings from the early 20th century. The plein air painting movement in California produced some of the most actively traded works in the American regional art market, and it produced them in quantities that mean genuine examples appear in estate sales in California, Arizona, and across the western United States with meaningful regularity. Plein air painting, from the French for open air, refers to painting done outdoors directly from the subject rather than in a studio from sketches. The California plein air artists, working primarily between 1890 and 1940, painted the California landscape with a directness and luminosity that captured something specific about California light that studio painting could not replicate. The movement produced hundreds of working artists whose names are now documented in specialized reference books and whose paintings sell at auction houses in California at prices that most people outside the regional market have never encountered. A painting by a documented California plein air artist in good condition sells for $5,000 to $300,000 at regional specialist auction, depending on the artist and the quality of the work. The major names, William Wendt, Franz Bischoff, Granville Redmond, and Edgar Payne, among others, command the highest prices. The documented but less famous artists working in the same tradition and the same period still command serious prices. The specific visual characteristics of California plein air work, loose, confident brushwork, specific palette of warm oranges and dusty blues and deep greens, small to medium format canvases or boards, plein air work was often painted on masonite or cardboard board rather than stretched canvas, are recognizable once you know what you are looking at. Any painting that matches this visual profile, particularly if it was acquired in California or from someone with California connections, deserves to have its signature researched against the California plein air reference literature before any decision is made. Number 5. Drawings, watercolors, and prints by artists with documented market value. Works on paper are the category most consistently overlooked in estate clearances because they look less substantial than oil paintings and because they are stored in ways that lead to their accidental loss. Rolled in tubes, folded in boxes, stored flat between other papers, framed under glass and hung so long that nobody remembers what is in the frame. But the market for works on paper by documented artists is serious and active. A drawing by a significant artist is not worth less than an oil painting by the same artist simply because it is on paper rather than canvas. In many cases, drawings reveal an artist's working process in ways that finished paintings do not, and collectors pay accordingly. The works on paper most likely to be found in American estate collections are 19th century American drawings and watercolors, prints by artists who also produced paintings, architectural drawings, and illustrations from the period before. Photography replaced drawn documentation, and travel sketches by artists who documented their journeys in pencil and watercolor before the era of casual photography. A watercolor by Winslow Homer has sold for over $2 million. A drawing by John Singer Sargent has sold for over $300,000. These are the famous names, but the broader market for authenticated works on paper by documented American artists of the 19th and early 20th centuries extends to dozens of names whose works bring $10,000 to $100,000 at specialist auction. Before any drawing, watercolor, or print is removed from its frame, donated, or sold, examine the image carefully for a signature and look at the back of the frame for any labels, inscriptions, or documentation. Old frames from estate collections frequently carry gallery labels, exhibition labels, and collector stamps that constitute the provenance documentation specialists look for. Number 4. Religious paintings acquired from churches, religious institutions, or European sources. American families with European ancestry and Catholic, Orthodox, or Protestant backgrounds accumulated religious paintings throughout the 19th and early 20th centuries through inheritance, through travel in Europe, and through the dispersal of religious institutions that sold works from their collections during periods of financial difficulty. These paintings sit in attics and estate sale collections, looking like old devotional objects from a tradition that the current generation does not practice. They look like Italian or Spanish paintings of saints in gold frames that nobody wants to hang in a modern home. They get priced as decorative objects without any examination of whether the painting itself might be significant. The problem with this assumption is that European religious paintings of genuine quality were produced continuously from the 13th through the 19th century, and the auction market for works from this tradition is international, active, and capable of producing results that bear no relationship to what a church sale or estate sale would price the same object at. A painting of a saint in an old European frame, examined by a specialist in old master paintings, might reveal a panel painting from the 15th century worth $200,000. It might reveal a 17th century Italian work by a documented artist worth $50,000. It might reveal a 19th century academic painting worth $2,000. The visual examination required to distinguish these possibilities requires expertise. Before any religious painting goes to an estate sale or church thrift store, photograph it completely, including the back of the canvas and the frame, and send those photographs to a specialist in European paintings. The specialty auction houses, Christie's and Sotheby's, both have old master paintings departments that accept photograph submissions, as do regional auction houses that handle European material. The submission is free. The potential return on the examination is not small. Number 3. Paintings with gallery labels, auction house stamps, or exhibition stickers on the back. This is the category that requires the least expertise to identify and produces the most immediate financial clarity, because the information is right there on the back of the painting in printed text, and finding it takes 30 seconds. Every painting that passed through a gallery was labeled. Every painting that sold at auction received a sticker or stamp with the auction house name and lot number. Every painting that was exhibited at a museum or art institution received an exhibition label. These labels and stamps accumulated on the backs of paintings over generations, and they constitute a documentary record of the painting's history that specialists call provenance. Provenance matters financially in the art market in a way that is not intuitive until you understand why. A painting with a documented history that includes recognized galleries, prestigious exhibitions, or notable previous owners is a painting whose history can be verified. Verified history reduces the risk of purchasing a misattributed or fraudulent work. Reduced risk translates directly to higher prices at auction. A painting with a Wildenstein and Company label from the 1920s, the prestigious New York and Paris gallery that represented many of the most important artists of the early 20th century, is a painting with a specific provenance that makes it worth examining more carefully than a comparable painting without that label. Gallery labels from galleries that no longer exist can be researched through art historical references. Auction house stamps can be cross-referenced against historical auction records, many of which are now digitized and searchable online. Exhibition labels from museum shows can be traced through exhibition catalogs that are held in museum library collections. Turn every framed painting over before it goes anywhere. Read every label, every stamp, every sticker. Photograph them all. The painting that looks insignificant from the front may have a back that tells a completely different story. Number 2, paintings where the signature is hidden, obscured, or not immediately visible. Old varnish darkens. Old paint layers crack and shift. Paintings accumulate grime across their surfaces over generations of hanging in rooms with open fires and candles and cigarettes. And some painters sign their work in locations that were not standard, in corners that have been covered by reframing, in paint colors that have shifted in value with age and now blend with the background. The result is a specific category of painting that is consistently priced as unsigned because the signature is not visible in casual examination, while an expert cleaning and examination would reveal the signature that changes the financial picture entirely. Before a painting is assumed to be unsigned, examine it under raking light, a single directional light source held at a low angle to the painting's surface. Raking light reveals texture differences and paint layers that are invisible under flat overhead lighting, and a signature painted in a slightly different texture from the surrounding paint surface will often appear under raking light, even when it is invisible to the eye under normal conditions. A UV light source is the second tool. Many pigments fluoresce differently under ultraviolet light, and a signature painted in a different period from surrounding overpaint will often be visible under UV examination. These examinations do not require professional equipment. A basic UV flashlight available for $20 and a single directional lamp are sufficient for a first examination. The practical implication: any painting that looks unsigned but has other characteristics suggesting age and quality, specifically confident brushwork, signs of genuine aging in the paint and canvas, and subject matter consistent with a specific period of art production, deserves examination under raking and UV light before it is assumed to be the work of an unknown hand. The signature that changes the value of the painting may be there. It may simply need better light to be read. Number 1, the painting in the house that nobody has looked at properly. The $45 flea market head that sold for $9 million was not in a locked storage facility. It was not in a museum basement. It was at a flea market, available to anyone who walked past the table, and the person who bought it did so because he looked at it more carefully than everyone else who had walked past it that morning. That is the whole story. Looking more carefully is the entire competitive advantage in this category. The paintings in estate houses, in attics, in the back rooms of antique stores, and in the lots of estate sales are not hidden in any meaningful sense. They are there. They are available. The question is not where they are. The question is whether the person who encounters them is looking at them properly. Looking properly means turning the painting over before you assess the front. It means reading every label, every stamp, every inscription on the back of the canvas and the stretcher bars and the frame. It means looking at the front under good directional light rather than overhead fluorescent light. because the signature visible under one light condition may be invisible under another. It means checking the support material, canvas, or panel, and thinking about what that tells you about the age of the work. It means photographing the signature and searching the name rather than assuming unfamiliarity means insignificance. The painters whose work now sells for hundreds of thousands of dollars were not famous when they were alive in most cases. They were working artists who sold their paintings to private buyers, many of whom hung the paintings in their homes and passed them to their children and grandchildren without maintaining any documentation of who the artist was. The documentation that remains is on the painting itself, and finding it requires looking. Go look at the paintings in the house, all of them. Turn them over, read the backs, examine the signatures. Photograph everything you cannot immediately identify and search those photographs. The Martin Johnson head at the flea market was $45 because nobody before that buyer had done what he did when he picked it up. He looked at the back. $45 at a flea market, $9 million at Christie's. The painting did not change. The examination did. You now know what to look for in 10 categories of paintings that consistently appear in estate sales and attic collections at prices that have nothing to do with what the right examination reveals. The back of the canvas is the starting point. The signature is the next step. The provenance documentation on the frame is what turns a significant painting into a documented significant painting. Before any painting goes to a thrift store, an estate sale, or the garbage pile, turn it over. Read everything on the back. Photograph the signature. Send those photographs to a specialist if anything about the work suggests it might be more than it appears. The flea market buyer who found the Hetty spent about 3 minutes looking at a painting that everyone else had walked past. That is the entire lesson. If this video made you go look at something that has been on your wall for 20 years without anyone examining it properly, hit like. Subscribe because every video on this channel is built on the same principle. And leave a comment telling me what you found when you turned it over. 3 minutes and a phone call. That is what $9 million looked like before anyone knew.